Hi, everybody. I hope your week is going well so far. I know I said I was going to do a live feed, but I was having some technical difficulty, and also there's a lot of dead air, silence when you're trying to do that, waiting for people to get on, and then questions or whatever. And sometimes, at least right now, there's not a whole lot of questions. So I wanted to do this one. I may do one other one, and then I'm going to do one that I'm going to upload as basically a speech example for schools or for any rehabs or groups that may want to book me for speaking to them. But otherwise, I'm going to do this one and one other one, and then I have to focus on the next phase of my life. We talk about people, places, and things, and it isn't just the people, places, and things that you were involved with when you were addicted. It's also the people, places, and things that are not good for your growth, or may send you backwards or whatever. And when you get to a point, everything is a good thing as it takes you through the learning process, a season, but when you get to a point where you're no longer growing at a particular time in your life or a particular season, and in fact threaten to go backwards, that's when you have to evaluate. And I've been doing that for some time, and my son, getting there to see him, of course, and his family has been priority, but then my car went bye-bye, and I've been trying to work on that and make that progress, which has been difficult because I was working for a company, and then when things financially went awry for them, I started working at the home business with the person I was living with, and I looked at that as a sign from God at that point to jump into this. It was about the time the documentary was coming out, and I do it 10 or 12 hours a day, and it's a labor of love. And I have to tell you that last night was one of those moments when I felt discouraged. I'll never stop, but I felt a moment of discouragement, and I will tell you that if you don't ever feel that way, then or you don't want to admit to it, then you're not being honest. But what most people don't know is that I've taken a lot of grief for doing this from people close to me. They have told me that it was stupid, that it was a waste, that it was not bringing in money, that it wasn't worth my time. So I think it's particularly hard when you're out there doing, eventually I want to get to a place where I'm serving somewhere and, being able to support myself to that end. But right now, it's just, a labor of love. And when you're doing things like I'm doing and you have people coming at you, criticizing you from all ends, I'm going to tell you, there's no story. Everybody has a story, and everybody's had something difficult that's happened in their life. The difference between us sharing, or me sharing, for instance, or someone else sharing what's happened to us and what we've been through versus other people in the world who've gone through horrible things is this. I'm not sharing that story with you to be like, oh my God, that's a horrible story, or that's an amazing, powerful story. The fact is that it's a very sad story, but that's not the focus. The focus is to give you a background of the evolution and the progress and the lessons learned, right? Share with whoever the power of where I was and how bad off I was to where I am now and where I'm gonna get to. It's a progress. It's a journey, and it's not about me being able to give you any advice or anything like that. I just share with you, and I share with you how bad it was. And there's people out there who have it as bad or worse, and if they can look and see, oh, she's still going. She hasn't killed herself. She hasn't gone back to drugs. She hasn't been perfect, but she hasn't done those things in spite of maybe very little support emotionally or anything else. If she can do it, I can do it. And that is my message to you. Not that my life or my experience was harder or a more powerful story than someone else's. Everybody's story is powerful. It's how you choose to tell it, and it's what you choose to do with it, okay? So that is that. If you only knew and I'll tell you, I'll keep talking about my daughter till the day I die, and whoever doesn't like that, that's their problem. I have a right to grieve as I choose, but the fact that I get up every day and I keep going and I genuinely care about other people who need the help, and I spend my time doing it. I don't think I'm, Jesus, I don't require any accolades for that, but if someone is putting someone down for doing that, and I'm referring to my own life, okay, I've had to let people go who were negative, who didn't feel there was any productivity to that. If they don't feel that it's productive because of their own demons or addictions or whatever, I have to let them go. I have to put them in the past. And there's nothing wrong with that, because the truth is no one owes us anything. We don't owe anyone else anything, but no one owes us anything. We don't owe someone an apology. They don't owe us an apology. They don't owe us to help us. My friend Diane, I let her know, and I let everyone know how they impact my life now, because they don't owe me anything. The truth is that, when people do for you, they do it for one of two reasons. They do it because they want to, out of the goodness of their heart, or they do it for their own motives. But either way, that's not for me to figure out, right? So I'm just sharing that. So anyway, to that end, I'm not going to be doing many videos because for the next couple of weeks, because I am trying. I really truly need to get on the focus of getting myself moved and getting myself to the next phase of my life. Because if I don't, then I'm not going to be productive and reach that place that I believe God has for me. Reach that place where I can be more helpful to others. My focus is on youth. I think everybody chooses to work with youth because there's promise, there, and there's hope there. And oftentimes we give up on adults, but I'm proof positive that someone can change at any age. And I hope that we don't give up on adults. I just find I have a better knack with younger people, and I would like to work with women. So hopefully we'll see where that goes, and that's it on that. So I am on a lot because I'm almost obsessed with it. I guess you call it another addiction if you want to, but I guess it's what I go to when I'm getting negativity on all sides, or if I'm feeling down. It's what I go to just keep myself, going and focused on because it is something that's such a priority and it matters so much. And I know I'm not the only one. There are so many of us out there doing that. So I wanted to share, I mentioned that I was going to share on my daughter and I and the similarities in our situation. So I'll touch on it briefly because I don't want these things to go on too long, but I just want to say that there was a time when I was a young person, and I'm not going to get into the details of what that was. I will another time because there's just too much to it, okay? But when I was a young person, there were several instances where I was sexually abused or physically abused. Initially, a lot of it I couldn't control because it was, my surroundings. But then as I became older, I would put myself in those situations because it became comfortable. It became what I knew. And my psychiatrist back then used to say, sitting duck for exploitation. It's this truth. There's something on your face. Whatever the case, you put yourself in those situations in harm's way. It doesn't make it right, and it doesn't mean that you're wrong. You're not guilty. It's not your fault. It's not the child's fault. But I began seeking out or being drawn to those situations. So as I had gone through so many things, I felt a great deal of sympathy for myself because I knew I was such a warrior protecting my daughter and my son. And I felt that I had done a very good job, and that at all costs, there is no way that they could compare their pain or their situation to mine because, they were in a situation where they were well protected and loved and they had their parents still, right? And they weren't suffering any physical abuse or whatever. So when my daughter started becoming of age, before all that had happened, she had been molested by a family member on the other side, my stepfather's family, at an incident when we went to visit family there. And it was horrible, traumatizing, and it was something I don't really want to get into right now, but it was pretty bad, and I was pretty upset by it. So after that point, I really tried not to talk about it much, but I did focus on her a great deal and try to get her to draw her out to talk about it. And then as time went on, when she was in school, because she suffered from anxiety, and she was always a quiet person, she had a tendency to draw within herself, and she was very focused on, her animals, and then she met a few friends, and they were similar in character. But she, would often do things, want to act out in ways or whatever, but she was never a bad child. She was always a very sweet, good child, no matter what. But as she got older, the friends you keep and all that are very important, and going to parties and sneaking out of the house and doing things like that. When you're sneaking out of the house, of course, and your parents aren't aware of it, things tend to happen. And on one of those, things started to spiral for me, and I was under the not under the influence of drugs yet, but I was working a lot of hours and having some problems in the relationship I was in. So I was not necessarily focused. I just felt that she was doing well because she would have no reason not to be doing well. And she was starting to sneak out and do these things. And I guess at one of these evenings where she did this, she was out with a friend and ended up in the company of some guys, and we're in like a local gang, MS-13 or something, and couple of adults, and they were at an abandoned house that was being sold. It was on the market, and I guess one of the kids' parents was the real estate agent for it. Long story short, Kirsten ended up getting trapped in the restroom there after feeling an enormous amount of pressure, pain, anxiety, because she had the feeling that something was wrong. She ended up getting, she went to the bathroom, locked herself in, and then being stuck there. And eventually, in order for her to leave, she had to, they forced her into acts that she didn't want any part of, and she was pretty upset. They ended up taking her to the local gas station, using all the minutes on her phone till her phone died, and took her to the local gas station and dropped her off. She walked into the gas station and asked if she could use their phone, and the lady there told her, no, we don't let customers use their phones. This was around 2:30 in the morning on a weekday, and a 14-year-old's walking in, and that's what you say. Finally, my daughter got a hold of a friend who ended up getting her back home. The next day, we were in the bathroom. She begins to tell me what happened, and she's shaking and she's trembling, and it was a day I'll never forget. And the events that surrounded that, following up, following a police report, trying to follow through, trying to get anybody to do anything, chasing them down, thinking I wanted to kill the guys, all of those things became emotionally, and I tried to force my daughter into counseling. She didn't want to participate with counseling. But what it required was consistency, and that was where I went, I believe, wrong, because at that point, not too much long after, she started the cutting, and I didn't realize she was cutting until she was almost 17 years old, and one day it was revealed to me the scars all the way up the arm, because she didn't want anyone to see where she'd been cutting. She'd been hiding it. And the reason that she put them up so far on her arm is because she did not want, she wasn't doing it because everybody else was doing it. She was doing it because so she explained it to me, and she said, well, when I do it, it feels good because the pain in here, it makes it, I feel something out here. And I couldn't comprehend people doing that until then. And I just sat there, and it was heartbreaking, and I just was crying, and I was like, Kirsten, what'd I do wrong? She's like, you didn't do anything wrong, Mom. And it was, I'm like, well, was it those guys? What was it? Because the police never got them, was it because we didn't kill them? Is it because I didn't know. I questioned myself a lot, and I know that we went, and I even reported to my doctor, who reported to CPS, reported to the police, and we did everything we could. We weren't able to have any success. And yet, so once I thought the best thing would be to not discuss it, not bring it up, and that if she seemed okay, she was okay. But probably about a year later, she got to the point where she wouldn't even get out of bed. She wouldn't even get off the sofa. She had a very severe depression. And at that point, I said to her, I said, let's get you on medicine. I took her to the psychologist. They didn't have any luck or success with her, getting her to open up to them at all. The first session, they just sat there and looked at each other, and Kirsten said, I'm not going back. And I put her on medicine. She, after a few days, or probably about 2 weeks, is when she decided, she said, I feel nothing. I'd rather feel pain than nothing, Mom. I don't like the way I feel. So I let her come off the medicine. So when she told me she was okay, even though it didn't look like she was okay, I left it alone. And so I got distracted, went on about my way. But what I realized that needed to happen was so much my words and my hugs and my reassurances or whatever. It was the actions, right? And what she had been witnessing in me is a person who was not loving herself, a person who kept ending up in the wrong situation, in the wrong relationships, and doing things that with my mouth I'm saying one thing, but with my actions I'm saying another. A person that's closed off, a person that doesn't let people in. and a person who's in pain. And as much as I would tell her love herself, everything I was doing, I wasn't showing her with my actions. So that brings me to where I am now, and of course, you know, and it leads into the pill thing or whatever, the very woman that she didn't want to emulate, she also looked up to and thought was larger than life. She loved me more than, you know, both my kids loved me more than I could ever deserve. And I think every parent feels that way. And it doesn't matter how good of a parent you feel you were or weren't. If you were a good parent, you're going to ask yourself if you did enough, right? And if you're a bad parent, you're going to ask. And if you don't ask if you did enough and you think you did enough, you probably didn't. But I think it's a normal question. But my hindsight was 20/20 because while I was in it, I thought I was doing everything I could. I didn't know what else to do. I thought if I panicked, that would be bad. I thought if I, overboard, it would be bad. I thought if I ignored it, it would be bad. So all I did was constantly worry. But in my actions about myself and how I was leading my life in steady decline, that was all that needed to be said. And she was watching and following my directions. So today, as it pertains to now, when it comes to giving advice, I don't give advice, but how I come to a point where the things that I believe I have to live out, right? The things that I believe and that I know I have to execute. And that's where I am in this point in my life, is that I know the answers. I'm self-aware. So I need to put them into action. I don't explain myself to people who are negative anymore. I don't let them force their truth on me, because I know the truth. And when I'm wrong, I admit I'm wrong and I correct it. But I get the negativity out of my life right away. I don't argue with it. I don't try to explain anything, because I've learned that that's a terrible waste of energy that could be better suited to people that need it, and to myself. And that was something I didn't do back then. If this person, this man that I'm involved with or whatever is having an issue, I'm constantly putting out fires with that. You know what I mean? And customers and worrying about customers and things like that. These things will be there tomorrow, right? And the world will turn, but your kids. So I had a lot of lessons, and it leads me to today, right now, and where I am, and that I'm going to focus on moving myself to the next phase of my life so that I can be the most productive. I'm not going away. There's no way I'm going away. This is my life passion. And what other people do or don't do, you have to forgive me, because sitting in this chair just feels so comfortable. I have a little bit of ADD, right? Maybe a lot. And I tend to always think that what I'm doing is I'm, multitasking. And then I learned a long time ago, and I was like, man, they're right. I used to think I could multitask. There's no such thing. Not really, because you're not putting enough attention to any particular thing to do it well. And that's where I am in my life. I'm like, okay, so I'm at the point where I'm growing, I'm in transition, but it's time to get to the next season of my life, and I need to put 100% focus on that so that I can get to that place, so that I can be available to help other people as well as myself. So taking others on that journey isn't about being biased. It's actually the opposite. I don't know about other people, but for me, it's hard. It's not hard to be criticized or hard to be judged or hard to be misunderstood. That I'm used to. It's hard when you put 12-hour days into it. It's hard when you eat, breathe, sleep it, and you see a setback. It's hard when you've poured your passion and heart and your tears, blood, sweat, and tears, and explaining something to someone and realize that they still don't get it or they still judge. Because I'm not one that's like, oh, we're a bunch of victims. I'm coming up with solutions. I'm thinking of solutions, not only for myself, but for others. And I don't believe this is a victim mindset. I think sharing is about saying, I take control and power over the things that I was powerless over and the things that I had power over. And that I want to turn that around by giving back, by sharing, by living outside of myself to keep myself accountable. The more people that see my progress or whatever lack of, the less likely I am to slip backwards, because I, would feel responsible to them, right? Especially if they are inspired by your progress. But you don't have to be perfect, and I'm certainly not. And that I think is the beauty of it, and that's what I guess I was trying to show. I'm not trying to be the next Tony Robbins or Oprah, bless them both, or Steve Harvey. I love him to death. I'm Katrina King, and I've got a long way to go, but I'm trying to show you that where I was and how bad it was, not the worst things that could ever happen to anyone in the world, because there are people in the world who've suffered far more. That isn't the point. And the point isn't that we all fight. Every time you see a person's story, you go, oh, well, my story's better than that one. These stories are not better than another one. These are stories that aren't great. They're not awesome stories. These are sad stories. These are awful stories. This is not something any kid or any person should ever want to aspire to. And it's not like, I know I didn't, set out when I was, 6. I'm going to go and I'm going to cross off all of these things. I'm going to do all these things. I'm going to have all these things happen so that I can sit here today in this hole doing this, missing my child and feeling all this pain and regret and guilt. I don't know. Maybe other people did that way. I very much doubt it. So the idea of taking what you went through or what you did to yourself and others and getting through the lessons and sharing those lessons is the key. Sharing the lessons and sharing the inspiration of where you were. That's the key. Not sharing the story for the purposes of saying that's a really awful story. That's I know that there are people who look at it that way. It's a human thing to want to do the drive-by, to do the rubbernecking, to, the tragedy or whatever of it all. But that's not where I'm coming from. To me, the tragedy is that there's still young children out there being abused and no one's doing anything about it. The tragedy is that there are awesome lives dying from addiction and pain, and we're still joking about it. The tragedy to me is that we can't share our stories without people thinking, well, I got this better story, that one's got a better story, or why is that person sharing that story if they're feeling sorry for themselves or whatever. That, to me, those are the tragedies, not what has happened to me or what I've done to myself. What I'm doing is telling you that I got through it, I'm getting through it, and that I made mistakes, and that I had things happen along the way, even, my own doing or someone else's. I made bad choices in friendships, relationships, this, that, and the other, and yet I persevere. That's my message, because I know that I sure would have loved to hear that back then when I was going through all my mess. So, anyway, everybody have a great rest of your week, and I'll upload the speech. But I really want to get out there and get on the ground and start working one-on-one with the schools and communities, sharing useful information, sharing my heart with theirs, and work on a plan to solve, or not solve, there's no solution, right, that fits all, but come up with a plan for those who are coming from addiction or getting through addiction, based on my own experiences, which have all been hard, getting to a point where I can share that with others, or share that in hopes that maybe we can come up with a plan that may help others who are coming behind me. So, all right, well, thank you very much for letting me share once again, and I hope to see everybody maybe later in the week or next week once I've gotten everything moved over, and cross fingers that, miracles will happen, and things will come through, because I'm ready and I miss my family very deeply. So, everybody, have a great night. Thanks again.